Okay, so like I was saying before, if you're on your Facebook page and you see an article about, I don't know, Nicki Minaj. Oh, God, I can't stand her. Anyway, so Nicki Minaj, parties in California, you're never going to believe what happens next. So you click on the article, right? So 10 to 1, what it's going to look like, all right, is going to look like this. Nicki Minaj, that's going to be the title. Parties in North Carolina or North California, you'll never believe what's going to happen next. So we have the title and then the subheads, right? So the subheads, right? So this, of course, would be our title of the article, right? So what we're going to be looking at right now, okay, is an article story, right? So you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of different things in there compared to the last story that we read, The Experiment. So we're going to have superstition number 1, right? So this is the main head. So this is going to be the main idea of this whole thing, is superstitions. And then we have subheads, okay? So ravens predict death. We talked about this before, but I'll go over it again. Where it came from. Ravens are scavengers, so they often are spotted at cemeteries and battlefield, places associated with dying. People started thinking the birds could predict death. So right there, right, with a superstition, we have something negative about it, right? So normally with superstitions, it is always followed by something bad or something negative, right? But on the flip side, with the next subhead, it says, what's the truth? So the idea is that, ravens predict death. They're bad luck. But now the second subhead, right, is going to tell us if this is actually true or false or a different idea. So people who spot ravens could be in for some good luck, not death. According to legend, Vikings sailing the ocean would release captive ravens and follow them toward land. If the birds returned, the sailors knew land was still far away. So, with that bit of information, right, just like we talked about with cultures, right? So, in America, right, if you go to a cemetery and you see a whole flock of ravens in a cemetery, you're like, well, F that. Like, I'm not going to go in there. It's bad luck. I'll probably stumble into like an open grave and get buried alive or something. I don't know, right? But in Norwegian culture, in Norse culture, right, Vikings used ravens to be able to tell if land was close or far. So they would send ravens out, and if the ravens were to fly off, right, and then they were to come back, that means there's no land in sight. So you're going to keep going and sailing. If you let ravens go and they don't come back, well, you're very close to land because ravens are smart creatures and they're going to go right where it's safe. Okay, they want to go where they can perch. So for this culture, okay, that is something that is actually a positive. So in some aspects, right, again, I don't know about every superstition in the world, and I will never claim to know about every superstition, but some superstitions, depending on culture, can differ from person to person or culture to culture. All right? So if you were to write an article yourself, right, if I were to say, okay, you guys are going to pick a superstition, and then you're going to break it down for me and do a presentation and let me know how everything works out, this is about how you might begin to do that. So, of course, you want the title, right? So you can actually title your own article, right? Because you're creating it, right? You're not copying it from anywhere. So you might say Superstitions, the Truth Uncovered, right? So the main head would be Superstition 1, because that would be the first superstition you would talk about. Then the subheads, this is where we get into like the meat of the article. So let's think about it this way. So think about the title is being your name, your date, blah, 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 right? The main head is, of course, your introduction paragraph. The subheads are like your body paragraph, and then the ending to wrap it up would be your conclusion. So every part of writing that we have, we can always go back to that basic, right? Of our introduction, our body paragraphs, our conclusion. But here it's a little bit simpler. So we would go with the title. We would go for part 1 of our story, which is Superstition 1. And then we would go into detail about where it came from and what's the truth, right? So where it came from, of course, like our holiday presentation, is our origin. Where did this superstition start, right? Where did the superstition start where if you step on a crack, you break your mother's back? Where did that come from, right? Where did the superstition come from if you break a mirror, you have 7 years bad luck, right? Where did the superstition come from where if you open an umbrella inside the house, that you have bad luck? Where did all of this stuff come from? And then you would give me the truth about it, okay? You would tell me if this is true or if it's widely believed or if there's another explanation from it, okay? So, what are the superstitions? Which superstitions do I know? That's something we can talk about later on, but I really want to get into the meat of the story right now. So, Superstitions, the Truth Uncovered. Now, this is a magazine article. Normally, you always have some kind of backdrop image if you're reading a magazine, all right? And then you have the text right on top of it. So we have Superstitions, the Truth Uncovered, right? And then we have the author's name. An experiment, a man's belief determines his actions. In this magazine article, find out the truth about some beliefs called superstitions. Superstitions are beliefs that we have, either about good luck or bad luck. Like I said before, right, with my fantasy football team. My team's winning, I'm going to keep my beard long. Does that make any sense? No. Do these football players know that I'm growing out my beard to look like a hobo so that I can win in my fantasy football? No, right? But for me, it gives me comfort, right? It gives me something to hold on to. Is it silly? Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit it's really silly, okay? But if I cut my beard, right, and then I lose, well, then what? Then I could be like, well, it's my own fault because I cut my beard. Is that true? No. It's asinine. It's silly, right? But sometimes that's what we have. We put stock into something. We put belief into something that really shouldn't be there, okay? So, some people believe in superstitions to explain the unexplainable. Often that means bad luck. Old Mr. Smith's house burned down? Well, he must have forgotten to knock on wood after he and his home was fireproof. But where did strange beliefs like this come from? And why did people believe them? Here are straight facts behind some superstitions. Straight facts, right? Like, I don't know, a lot of you guys use that sort of, I don't know, I guess lingo. I don't know, hashtag facts, right? Like, you know, one of your Facebook friends posts something like, hey, you know, people who are Tauruses are just stubborn. And then you reply, hashtag facts, right? Like, I don't know, right? So there's a different culture about that. So let's look at this one, the first one. We're going to go about ravens, right? So superstition number 1, ravens predict death. So ravens are scavengers. So they were often spotted at cemeteries and battlefield, places associated with dying. People started thinking the birds could predict death, right? So what is the truth? People who spot ravens could be in for some good luck. not death. According to legend, Vikings sailing the ocean would release captive ravens to follow them toward land. If the birds returned, the sailors knew land was still far away. And tame ravens are very friendly. They act like puppies, says Patricia Cole of New York City's Prospect Park Zoo. They'll sit on your lap, let you scratch their heads, and play tug of war. The raven became a symbol of death, but some people admire the bird for their intelligence and fearless behavior. So now we have two different stories here, right? Two different ideas. The first one is that, well, they're a harbinger of death. They hang around cemeteries, they hang around battlefields. You see ravens, that's it, you're done. Los finitos. Bye-bye, you're done, right? On the flip side, right, they can be good luck to some people. And like we said before, or the explanation I gave you before about the Norsemen, the Vikings who were sailing. Now, tame is very different than wild, okay? Do we know the difference between tame and wild? Okay. So if you get a puppy, right, and you feed it, you love it, you walk it, you train it, right? It doesn't, poop or pee all over your house. It doesn't get vicious. It doesn't bite you. It's very loving. If you tell it to sit or lay down or speak, it'll listen to you. So you've trained it. It's tame. Now, if you were to get a puppy from outside, right, who's to say that's going to happen? Your dog's probably going to go to the bathroom all over your house. It may not understand how to speak, how to roll over, how to lay down. It may be very vicious. So there's an element there that the relationship with humans are missing, right? So belief, right? Our first vocabulary word is something you think is true. I believe the sky is red. Is the sky red? I'd hope not, right? But if I believe the sky is red, right, well, then that's my belief. Is it wrong? Yeah, right? But some people believe certain things that are incorrect, okay? Unfortunately, that's with any culture and any human being, right? Superstition, an idea based on fear, not science or logic, right? So again, fantasy football. I let my beard grow out, right? Is there a scientific fact or scientist saying, you know what, if Mr. Griffin keeps growing his beard, he's going to win the fantasy football championship? Is there any scientist who's going to say that? No. Okay. So my fear there is if I change something, then I'm going to lose. All right. Like, here's the thing. My buddy Aaron, I love him to death, right? My best friend. I'm the godfather to his child. We've been friends for close to 20 years, right? He's watching a sports game. He's a big sports guy like me, right? So let's say that he's watching the Patriots, right? They're doing really well. He sits in the same spot on the couch throughout the whole game. Doesn't matter. If this guy's going to go to the bathroom, it doesn't matter. He stays in the same spot. If they're not doing well, he will move to a different spot in his house until they're doing better. That's loco, okay? That is ludicrous. I love him to death, but he is a psychopath, okay? Like that. But that's not any scientific fact, right? It's something that is about fear, where if he is not in a spot where the Patriots are winning, right, then it's going to be his fault if the team loses that day. Does that make sense? No. It's ludicrous. It's loco. Makes no sense, right? But sometimes people who are superstitious, there is no rhyme or reason to it, okay? It doesn't make sense to anybody else but them. Just like their belief, right? Doesn't make sense to anybody except them. So the unexplainable, things they can't figure out, right? Was fireproof. It means it couldn't burn down, right? So they have like fireproof curtains for like old theaters, right? So that if a fire were to start, it would stop right there. The curtains, it couldn't go any further. Scavengers, animals that eat dead things. Ooh, gross. Vultures are scavengers, right? As a matter of fact, they're the only animal alive. Here's some information for you because I know all this useless information. Vultures only eat things that are dead and rotten. They do not eat anything that's fresh. They actually also eat bones. It helps their digestive system, right? So there's your useless information about animals that you didn't ask for the rest of your day. Spotted, right? It's something that you've seen. So let's say that I'm walking and I'm talking to somebody and I wave, right? And someone's like, oh, who's that? I can be like, oh, I just spotted one of my students. So that means I just saw one of my students and I was waving hi to them, right? Captive ravens. So ravens kept on the ship. Not wild ravens. And tame ravens. Well, okay. Same thing. Ravens that are not wild. So ravens can be trained. Dogs can be trained. Cats, well, they're not as open to being trained, but they can be trained too, right? Some animals obviously are easier to tame and train than others, right? Ravens are one of those animals. They are extremely smart creatures. Very, very smart creatures, right? So the raven has become a symbol of death. Now, like I told you before, okay, the Raven was a very popular story written by Edgar Allan Poe, all right? It's a really, really old-fashioned poem that I will play whenever we're done with Superstitions in here. Basically, okay, it's this dude, and he's in his house, and he's just trying to relax, and then there's this bird who keeps annoying the crap out of him. And he just wants peace and quiet. The raven comes into his house. He wants this bird to go. But yet the raven keeps saying, nevermore. Basically, what that is in reference of is saying, haha, you want peace? Nah, bro, you ain't getting it. Nope, not happening. Not while I'm around. All right? But again, this poem was written in like the 1800s, 1900s. I think, yeah, 1800s. Pretty sure. Anyway, we will be going over that poem too, right? Just as a reference, because the raven is such an iconic being of, death and bad luck and all of this stuff. And that's actually, I think, how it got its really bad rap, is because of this story. This was one of the most popular literary stories of all time, literary poems of all time. Edgar Allan Poe, his work is well known for being macabre, which is sort of dark. The prose that he uses when he writes, the underlining tones in which he writes. Anyway, pretty interesting. All right, so before we go on to the next page, so this is the format of a magazine article, all right? So this is what you should expect to see. Now, how many of you have clicked on an article on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram before, right? One person, that's it? Only one person has ever clicked on an article in their life? Wow, you guys have lived a pretty sheltered life. Yikes. Does it not sort of look like this? Is it sort of formatted like this, where we have information, we have pictures, we have facts, right? Now, there's different kind of magazine articles. Obviously, this is like a scientific magazine because it's giving us facts, right? So let me just click on this, right? Hold on. Let's see. News topics, right? Topics. Let me see. What is some breaking news? Let me see. Where's the story? Okay, here we go. Right? Here's the story. House again impeaches President Trump, who releases video following vote. Right? So this is an article. We have a video in it. We have and a whole bunch of crap. Get out of here. Okay. So if we compare it to the article that we have here, we have the title, right? The subhead by Jamie Kiffel, right? If we look here, house again, blah, blah, blah. This is a title, right? Who it's from. We have a video in it. There are pictures in it, I'm sure. Well, actually, there's like spam here, right? So if we look at this, we have the same thing. We have pictures. We have information that goes along with it. We have pictures, videos, information that goes along with it. So this is very similar, okay? Very, very similar to any other article that you would be reading right now. That is very common. So whether it's in a scientific journal or it's an article you read online, this is the structure in which it's going to look like. All right? This is how it's all going to look. So, what do you guys think about ravens, right? So now that I've given you a little bit of information about like why they're bad luck and why they're good luck, what do you guys think? You think that they're cute? Yeah. Okay. They're cute, right? Sure. That's fine. I'll go with that. You know, they got those little beaks and, you know, they got their wings and they're like, hey, man, whatever, right? So the whole point sometimes of articles is to prove a point, right? Like that article that I just pulled up about the impeachment, right? That was to give us information to support the idea of that article. This right here is to give us evidence of the article itself, right? So the details. If I were to say, all right, I'm going to write an article, and I'm going to write that Mr. Griffin is the best teacher in the whole entire world, right? And then I talk about the fact that if you plant seeds in soil and you water them and you give it sunlight, then flowers are going to bloom. Or I talk about how Tyrannosaurus Rexes actually sounded like ginormous chickens. Or I talk about, you know, how dogs like to get their belly rubbed. Does that have anything to do with my title? Right? No, because I'm trying to, if that was the case, then I would change the title to stupid, useless information that nobody wants to read about, right? But if I'm writing about how Mr. Griffin is the best teacher in the world, what do you think that I should add in there? What should I add into that article if I want to show that I'm the best teacher in the whole wide world? You guys awake? You sure? So if I'm writing an article about me and how I'm the best teacher in the world, right? What do I need? What's that? Interesting. I'd hope so, right? I want my audience to be interested, right? I want them to, you know, care that I'm the best teacher in the world, right? So I want to connect to my audience. But what is the major, major important thing that I need to prove that point? If you do a crime and somebody wants to arrest you, what's something they need? Yes, correct. You're right. They would need handcuffs if they want to lock you up, right? But in order for them to arrest you, they need evidence. So in my article, I need evidence as to why I'm the best teacher in the whole wide world. I need proof, right? I can't just say I'm the best teacher in the whole wide world and then be like, mic drop, done. I mean, I could. Does that make it true? No, right? So I need evidence. when you are looking through magazine articles or any article actually throughout any social media website, make sure that there is evidence there. Nowadays, anybody can write anything about anything. Until our president, was blocked from all his social media platforms, he could say whatever the hell he wanted, which was quite dangerous. And, I don't want to get into this whole political thing, but so you have to be very careful about the news sources that you go to, right? So just like magazines, anybody can write anything in a magazine, so you need to make sure that it's credible. You need to make sure that they have the proper evidence. Just like here, ravens predict death, right? So what they actually did to prove that ravens are good creatures, they talked to a representative in New York, somebody who works at a zoo. So somebody who has this knowledge of these creatures, bless you, right? So if you are looking for evidence, you should always look for sources that have the correct information. If I wanted to ask you guys about, okay, how big is the moon, right? And then I decide to call LeBron James, right? And I ask him, hey, LeBron, how big is the moon? And he's like, you don't know, right? So am I going to write that in my article? No. Does LeBron James know anything about the moon? I mean, he might, maybe. But who do you think that I should ask about the moon? A scientist. Somebody who has experience in this field, right? If you want to find out about English, right, who should you talk to? An English teacher. That would be a good start, right? If you want to find out about, something about gym, are you going to talk to your history teacher? I mean, if they make it clear, like, hey, I know all this stuff, but you should, go to the source. Talk to your gym teacher. Talk to your health teacher, right? So make sure that when you are doing your own research, that you go to credible places. That's why I told you when you did your other research, right? Do not go to Wikipedia. I could go on Wikipedia right now and do an article about me about how I'm the greatest teacher in the whole entire world. Is it true? Yeah. I mean, I like to think so. Right? But it's not true, right? So with Wikipedia, anybody can write anything, which is why when you were doing your presentations, I told you to stay away from it. All right? So this is just one part of an article. And unfortunately, I went on a tangent, so we really didn't get to go much further than this. But tomorrow, when we come back into class, we are going to learn more and more about superstitions. We're going to follow along the story. All right? But I wanted to make it clear to you guys what the structure was of a magazine article and what are the things that you should look for. All right? Make sure that there is credible evidence in there. Make sure that there is information in there that is supported by sources who know what they're talking about. When they talk about, how they're actually very nice creatures. Patricia Cole, New York City's Prospect Park Zoo. She would know. She works with animals every day, right? If you want to find out about, the strides of ESL students in high schools, well, talk to an ESL teacher in a high school. We'll be able to tell you. We live it every day, right? So anyway, so that is where I'm at right now. So why don't you guys lock up, put your stuff away, and then we will go around, we'll clean the desks, and then tomorrow we will continue on with our story.